You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Nathan Whittacre, CEO of Stimulus Technologies. Very excited this week to have a guest on. We're welcoming Egor Olteanu. He is the CEO and co-founder of Volt. Welcome, Egor. Appreciate you coming on. So I'll read a little bio on you, and then we'll get into some questions. So very excited again to have Egor joining us. Volt is a mission-driven tech company that uses AI as a security force multiplier to help protect people and save lives. Egor and his business partner Dmitry founded Volt in Silicon Valley in 2019, based on their respective passions of public safety and wanting to utilize technology to make the world a better place. Prior to founding Volt, Egor served overseas in the U.S. Army and was a member of Google's Research and Development Department, or also better known as Google X, which is responsible for things like self-driving cars, drones, high-altitude balloons, and other special projects. With a rare combination of military and tech experience, Egor and Dmitry built a product that uses next-generation technology to help protect people from daily threats, including crimes, violence, and medical emergencies. By using AI, Volt allows millions of security cameras to be monitored 24/7, 365 with the same accuracy and consistency as monitoring a single security camera. As of now, Volt has been adopted by Fortune 500 companies, schools, office buildings, and industrial facilities. So very impressive background and very excited to have Egor on. So as we get started, tell me a little bit more about yourself and, what was your personal journey to forming Volt? Why did you decide to do it?
Well, I guess it all started when I was in the Army. I joined the Army fairly young, right after high school. And because of the nature of the time at that time, and because of the nature of my job in the military, I very quickly found myself deployed to the Middle East. And even before I knew anything about what technology is capable of on a big level, it made me wonder if there was a possibility to essentially have some sort of a device that you could throw through a window, throw through a hole in the wall to get a very quick snapshot of a heat signature to better understand what is the team walking into. Meaning, is there anybody in there? Is there one person, 10 people, etc.? And that was just a thought. I'm pretty sure I saw it in a movie somewhere in one of the sci-fi movies, and I did absolutely nothing with that thought. But then after, serving my time and getting out and getting my degrees, I was lucky enough to be recruited by Google X, where I really started to understand the capabilities of technology and what it can and cannot do. And fast forward, many years back in 2018, when that shooting did happen in San Bruno at one of the Google campuses, it really kind of came together where the idea that I had with my co-founder is that, well, a lot of these cameras really do rely on a lot of people watching them, but the reality is that you never have enough people to precisely identify every single problem that is happening in your facilities and throughout your campus. Well, with advances in AI at that time, we thought that maybe there is a way to connect all of the existing cameras to for lack of a better term, an AI risk management brain that will essentially continuously look at what's happening throughout your facilities and your outdoor areas and identify certain problems. And when those problems do get caught, then using the most efficient way possible, send that information to people that need to either respond, manage it, notify law enforcement, fire, EMS, etc. And that was the idea behind it. Of course, we've done thousands of failures and we had to reiterate many, many different times. But the basis behind starting Volt was essentially that.
Yeah, it's a great nugget. I think, a lot of us that go through an entrepreneurial journey start a company or come up with an idea that solves a real problem. And I think, your explanation of, seeing a problem and especially something tragic that happened to you and to your company, and coming up with a solution. A lot of people won't, take that next step. Oh, somebody needs to solve this. A lot of people say, but taking that next step and saying, okay, well, how do we solve that problem? And so kind of walk us through that journey. What did it take to get from this idea that first sparked your thought of using AI to monitor technology or to monitor these cameras to actually implementing this type of technology? What did that take?
Ignorance, not knowing how difficult will that be, not knowing how much we actually don't know about this space, not understanding how difficult it will be to build it and find funding for it, significantly underestimating how long it'll take to get the first paying customer, and even more to get the company into a financial state that will allow you to essentially hire more people, get another round of funding, etc. We thought that it was a fantastic idea, and the mission was so strong for us that we knew that, hey, we get it, that most companies fail, but this is important. It has the potential of saving lives. And if we spend the next, 5, 7, 10 years working on this, and even if it does not succeed, aside from the lessons that we learned, it's really a mission that we can get behind and really be proud of. Because of that, that ignorance kind of got ignored, and we're like, well, we'll figure everything out. We'll figure out how to build this. We'll figure out how to find the money. And once we started getting on this journey and realizing, difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, really the only thing that kept us going is not the idea of having a company. It's not the idea of building a cool product. It's not the idea of, becoming successful tech entrepreneurs. It was the idea that this mission is important and don't give up yet, right? One more day, one more week, one more month, one more year. And because of that, we were able to get through some pretty big challenges and, get investment and get first customers and start deploying to different sectors and really start seeing this product being adapted and actually start making a difference in day-to-day operation, including, saving some people along the way.
I think that's part of the entrepreneurial journey is really, I've often said, it's to live another day. And, a lot of people, I think, don't realize the difficulty of taking an idea and actually getting it to market, how much harder it is. They see the end result and say, oh my goodness, as an entrepreneur, you're amazing. You've done all this great stuff, but that day-to-day resilience that's required to keep pushing forward is so difficult. And there's only a few people that make it. I think that's why so many businesses fail. So it's great on you to continue pushing through. So talk to us about the tech challenges. It's your cameras have been around for many years. Integrating it with AI, you said you were ignorant on what it took to get it done. So what kind of challenges did you have to overcome from a technology perspective, and how did you find the right team to make that work?
Well, I'll start with the team because I had enough of a brain to realize that there's no way I can do this alone. There's no way I can do this without the correct co-founder. I've been in tech for a while. I love tech, but I'm not an engineer. I'm not an engineer by trade. Building something like that requires not just an engineer, but a very talented engineer that is not so much a surgical scalpel as he or she is one of those Swiss Army multi-tools. And luckily for me, my best friend and my childhood friend, Dimitri, is one of those. I mean, if you look at his career, he's done everything from, AI and cloud and risk management, and he led teams, but he also, rebuilds engines in his own vehicles. He played around building robots when I was in college. So the level of trust that I had in him, aside from, our relationship that has spanned, 2 decades, I knew that when things will get tough, and they will get tough, he'll figure it out, and he will expect me to do that in other areas. And by starting with that, and by him knowing exactly what type of people to surround himself with, especially in the early days where, we can't really offer salaries, we can't offer 401ks. It's more about the idea, the mission, and then a little bit of stock that, if the company fails, it's not worth anyway, right? but finding those right people, and then me finding the right people that can help us, get in front of potential customers and potential early adopters. That made all the difference, because that kind of put us in the right place where it's like, well, as long as the execution is more or less successful, we will have a shot at this. The technical challenges started pouring in immediately. A very simple one is AI is noisy. And this was explained to me early on, I think even before we registered the company, by a good friend of mine and a very accomplished engineer at Google X, where he goes, all right, let me dumb it down for you, because this is not your area of expertise. He goes, like, AI, you can either turn up the sensitivity and you will catch everything, but also a bunch of noise, or you can turn down the sensitivity and you're not going to get a lot of false positives, i.e. noise, but you're likely to miss some stuff. So once we started building it, and you get, of course, the first focus was identifying weapons. It quickly grew into a system that does many things on a daily basis, not just weapons, but we started playing around with the weapons. And the first moment of euphoria, where we're running a model in a place that we're testing the system in, and we're like, wow, we can identify that this is a gun, or this is a rifle, or this is a knife. And then, like after a cup of coffee, you go, hold on a second. And you pick up a coffee pot, and all of a sudden it identifies it as a gun, right? You pick up a chair, it's a gun, right? You wave your hands around, it's a gun. And you're like, whoa, this is crazy, right? Well, let's do something different. And now it's like, none of this has been identified, but neither are half of the weapons. And, one of the ways that we solve this is like, what? I think for a mission-driven company like ours, there needs to be a human component where, a lot of these difficult detections that will not pass the essentially the confidence threshold will have to be double validated by people. And this way you only escalate to the end user the real incidents while filtering out the noise. In theory, it sounded great, and it is. This is what we do. But the problem is that unless you can do it in 30 seconds or less, this no longer is a real-time system. So it removes a lot of the benefits that we wanted really the system to have. That was a big technical thing. Another one was, how do we work with every single camera out there that sits in a network, instead of asking the customers to buy our hardware, because it can be a big non-starter. Another technical piece to it was, how do we use on-prem hardware, but design it in such a way that we can incorporate that into the price of the system, i.e. the software, instead of asking customers to pay, $500,000 up front on hardware before they even start playing around with the system. Because this allows us to run quick and scrappy free pilots in order to the customer to understand, do we like the system, do we not like the system, and not be a blocker, having to pay X amount of thousands of dollars before they can even try the system to see if it's right for them. I can go on and talk about, how do you optimize the cost of running the system in the cloud, and how do you optimize this and that. But the technical challenges started from day one. They never stopped. And the more customers we get, the more, objectively successful we become, and the more the more we try to grow this company, the more these challenges become a lot more difficult. But it's just the name of the game, I guess.
Yeah, I as you were talking, I mean, so many things flooded my mind. We've often talked about on this podcast AI and the requirement of training. And training AI solutions reminds me about my kids when they were 2 years old. AI is just very excited to learn, and as soon as you say this is a chair, everything becomes a chair that might look like a chair, and it's just like a 2-year-old, it's or a gun or a knife or whatever it may be, and they run around yelling chair, chair, chair all day long. And that's AI systems are very teachable, but hard to become experts, right? But it's interesting learning of hearing your journey and as you have approached the market, how you've had to respond to circumstances it seems like you probably didn't even think of when you had this initial idea, like dealing with customer systems and how you integrate on premise with the cloud. And you're solving a lot of problems that in the tech industry big companies have been working on for many years in different aspects, whether it's, Microsoft working on moving email from on-premise servers to the cloud and things like that. It's a lot of difficult problems and not easy for a small company to solve. So it's interesting that you've had to experience all those things as a startup, in a difficult process.
You have to, because the faster you fail. I think I was asked this question once before in a podcast. It's like, what do you try to do on a daily basis? I try to fail as much as I can, as fast as I can, because it teaches you a lot, right? And the more that you fail, the more you realize what's working and what's not working. The difficult part for it, and again, this is not my thing. I believe it was Sam Altman that said that. It's just, a lot of people that have the mindset to start a company and build these products, they understand how difficult it is, and they expect a lot of failures. What they don't, maybe not that they don't anticipate this, it's just that they don't realize how often something bad happens, and how often they go through ups and downs, and how quickly they come, and how consistently they come over, days and months and years. And that just takes a very big psychological toll on you. But if you're willing, to stick around and understand that, what, failure and rejection is going to be part of this journey, and without it, you're not going to succeed. So just like accept it. Like going to Singapore in the summer, you are going to sweat. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to enjoy that city, same idea.
Yeah, it reminds me of similar type of thing. What you're saying is, being a CEO of a company or a founder of a company, an entrepreneur, is kind of like riding a lion. Once you get on there, everybody around you looks at you and says, "Oh my goodness, this guy has amazing abilities to ride this lion." And the guy sitting on the lion goes, "How the hell did I get on this lion, and how do I keep it from eating me?" Because a lot of times, that's the hard part about businesses. Everybody's trying to eat you, from technology problems to vendors to competitors to customers. There's all these things that are constantly battling you, and it's hard to stay resilient and stay positive through all of those things. So it's interesting to hear the same story. A lot of founders that I talk to, it's the same journey we all go through.
Yeah, and you're terrified every single second.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned in one of your first comments that you've had some success with incidents. Talk to us about something, if you're willing to share, where your technology has been able to save, or identify something that a human didn't catch, or a positive story that's come out of the work you've done.
Well, there's a lot of them now, obviously, but the two that I always go back to, because they're just, it was really one of the first ones that happened that kind of opened our eyes, but also made a lot of skeptics on the customer side believers overnight. The first one was a customer of ours that is in the tech space and has multiple offices, and of course after hours they have cleaning stuff that goes in and kind of tidies up the office buildings. And often it's after hours, and often they're alone. And we had an instance where the lady that was doing that job, she slipped and she hit her head. It must have been either the edge of the bar or something sharp, because she hit her head and she was down and she was not moving. And the system immediately picked that up as a medical emergency. It notified not just the end user, but also 911. And because of that, she was able to get help immediately. Now, even the people that were managing the security team for that customer, they said, "Hey, listen, if your system wasn't there, we wouldn't have, noticed that till somebody would either be doing their rounds, which were unlikely to happen till the morning, or people would walk into the office in the morning, and God knows what kind of terrible scenario you could have played out, right?" But this way, not only do we have, a happy person that knows that if something happens when she does her job, she'll get the help, but also have a happy customer that understands that, God forbid something like that happens, they do have a system that, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, and it's out there looking for the best interest of people that work there, right? That was one. Another one, well, actually, I'll give you two. In schools, One of them was, I believe, is the first high school that we started supporting. And we had this girl that, collapsed in the middle of a hallway, and, she was having a seizure. I'm not sure what seizure it was. And it was not life-threatening, but because of that, because the principal immediately was notified of that situation, he was able to quickly run over there, comfort the kid, make sure that she's okay. And think about what it says, not just to the kid, but to the parents and to the principal. It's like, hey, stuff like that, people have medical conditions. It's going to happen. And sure, it may not be life-threatening, but there's a very big difference between, giving that kid comfort within a few seconds versus, minutes, especially if I'm not mistaken, it was between periods. So it could have been, 30, 40 minutes before she would have gotten help. And another similar, but because our system is able to catch fighting and bullying, we do sometimes see, some pretty, unpleasant things that happen in schools. And when that happens, right, not only are you able to, to pull that person out of that situation, that fight or that bullying incident, and it did happen. I just don't want to go into details. But also, it's a very good education opportunity to kind of say, look, you guys think that this is fun, take a look and see what it looks like from the side. Do you really think that people should be acting this way, even if that's your friend, even if that's not your friend, but it's your classmate, whatever, right? Just realize what is happening. And just that visual understanding is like, yeah, you know what? We were out of line. This shouldn't happen. Yeah, I know that kids don't think about it this way. I'm sure we didn't when we're in high school. But not only is it able to prevent instances like that, but I like to believe that, at least to some people, it will be very eye-opening and very educational to possibly change their behavior in the future.
Yeah, your middle story really hit home to me. We had an incident in our family that my daughter's in high school. She was in her first period class and collapsed a few months ago and went into cardiac arrest. And we had no idea that she had heart issues. And if the teachers hadn't been there, people hadn't been around her to save her life, she probably would have passed away. And if she would have been anywhere else in the school other than in her classroom with the teachers, she might not have made it. And so it's an amazing story. I mean, it kind of hits home to me thinking, technology like this could have potentially saved my daughter's life when she had that medical incident. So that's an amazing thing to think about, that, that a tech tool can, just like you're talking about the first one, the person was alone and got detected. That's an amazing story. So thank you so much for sharing all those. Hey, you mentioned something at the beginning about you're not tech savvy. Can you talk to me about you personally, how you've had to overcome or learn to manage a technical team, a technical company, even coming from non-tech savvy background? What have you done to really manage well?
Well, I think that I am tech savvy. I'm just not an engineer, meaning that I know my limitations. Regardless of how interested I get in this, not everybody can be an Elon Musk, right, or a Steve Jobs that can just become. I mean, these are phenomenally smart people. I don't even pretend to be remotely close to them. But what I've always had is curiosity, and because of my hobbies, even before I, joined the army, I mean, I was assembling and disassembling motorcycle engines. And then while I was in the military, I decided to take up scuba diving and skydiving. And a lot of that, the more comfortable you get with that gear, at first you're afraid to touch your parachute because you think that anything you do, it might not deploy. But then you start realizing how it all works. And if you're not afraid, it's like, well, make sure that, the main closing pin and the loop are okay. Maybe pull out your cores that actually, do the cutaways of your main parachute and allow for a, problem-free release of your reserve parachute, and pull them out and, lubricate them, put them back in, make sure that everything is happening correctly. So I started kind of, playing around with that type of a stuff because it really interested me, and I became a lot more comfortable doing that. But all of that, the culmination really was the great people at Google X. Because once I got into Google X, I was very honest about not being technical with them, and they're like, "It's all right. You know what? We'll do the code. You can do the code, but let us teach you how to build a payload." For example, and the payload, I mean the payload that would be attached to the high altitude balloons. At that point, it was called Google Loon. And just by trial and error and them teaching me how to do it, next thing I know, I built one payload. It might not be as good looking as it was built, by some of those amazing engineers, but the second one was better. The third one was better. And then another challenge came, and they're like, listen, we need to figure out how to build a super pressure balloon. The last research done to them arguably was in the 1950s. There's only like 2 companies in the US that can actually do this. But while we're figuring out how to work with them, do you mind taking a crack at it? And yeah, sure. It took months before we could figure out, almost trial and error and learning a bunch of different stuff. But because of that curiosity, next thing you know, we built a super pressure balloon. It was nowhere near the professional quality of those companies, but it was achievable. And it was achievable by somebody who, I couldn't even spell super pressure balloon when I started working on that, right? It was that. And then going into other projects and other projects. And yeah, sure, I get my limitations on the technical side, but if you get the right people that, motivate you to do it and that can answer a few questions, and if you're not afraid to go on Amazon and order 10 books and read them, knowing that 90% of what those books say you will not understand, but if you understand 10% and you're willing to put in the time and the effort to do trial and error, even if you don't succeed, you're going to be 100% smarter than you were at the beginning of that journey. And I think that just translated into me believing that somehow I could be a founder of an AI company.
And I think that's what a lot of people are scared about, is that fear of failure, so they don't even try to begin with. So I think your willingness to try something and know that there's a possibility of failure and being okay with that, I think is really the start of that journey. So thanks for sharing that. And as we wrap up here, do you have any thoughts of AI? It sounds like you're always thinking about ways to improve things. Any thoughts on novel ideas for AI that we're not seeing today, or implementations that you're seeing coming in the future?
Novel ideas, not really, because I just don't think I'm the right person to talk about novel ideas. I think I'm a lot more practical person that sees opportunities in previously untouched sectors of society where AI could go. And that's one of the reasons why security was so appealing to me. Because, if you look at self-driving cars and you look at cybersecurity even, those are sectors that, historically have had a lot of engineering time and money and great brains diverted there. And that's why they're doing so well. Physical security, and in my opinion, has been done the same way since the Great Wall of China. It's just people with sticks walking around making sure nothing bad happens, right? And it was kind of a natural progression to me to realize that it has to change, right? The time has come for it to get upgraded, just like everything else was. And what is that upgrade? It's automation, because people will only become more expensive as time goes. Problems are only going to become more challenges, and they will come more often because of population growth and how quickly, we a lot of challenges are presented on a day-to-day. So my first thought was AI would be great to essentially add some automation to it. But now the more I'm into this, the more I'm becoming convinced that the next step will be robotics. And I don't know if this is going to be running dogs or drones or humanoids. I have no idea. But I know that just like we were right by saying, hey, you will never have enough people to watch all your cameras, because it's impossible to be at the right place at the right time all the time. Just the unit economics just doesn't work, right? I will say the same. It's impossible to have all the people that you need in order to be at the right place at the right time physically on your campus. And I think that when the unit economics works out, where AI is so well spread in physical security that it already has a very good understanding of some of the risk profiles that different organizations and different industries deal with, the natural progression will be to put that into some sort of a robotics application that essentially call it flying cameras or call in roving dogs, right? But instead of having 5 shifts to cover 24/7, you'll just need one system that can do that, because again, it doesn't eat, it doesn't sleep. The quality of the deliverable that you get is going to be phenomenal. And instead of hiring an army of people, you will hire those people that are professional, that truly love what they do, but they will have all these automating tools that will allow them to be, if not as effective, I actually think is going to allow them to be more effective than they currently are, but definitely not less. I honestly think that in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see a very big shift to robotics and physical security.
As you're talking about it, just makes me think about science fiction movies, kind of like bringing it back to your first comment of, oh, this is probably something I saw in a sci-fi movie. How do I do it? And, it might be something, 5 years ago, we say, well, that's, 50 years away. But I think it's very believable to think that the robotics and AI technology is just a few years away, not 50 or 100 years away. We're on the cusp of so many changes with this. It's very exciting times.
I certainly believe so.
So, kind of wrap up, how do people get in contact with you? And if they're interested in your technology, how do they find you?
I think the fastest way to do it is our website, obviously, Volt.ai, but also I'm on LinkedIn, the only social media platform that I'm on. But if there's anything that we can do to help, if people just want to get in touch and say hello, or they would like to brainstorm some ideas, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, or send us a note through our website, and we'd be more than happy to chat.
Oh, great. Thanks, Egor. And it was very interesting, very insightful, and wish you great luck as you're deploying this product.
I appreciate it.
Pleasure
meeting you.